Hello and welcome to Ivory Blush Roses. My name is Lisa and today we're on block 5 of the chain stitch portion of our sampler project. The stitches we're going to do today are not always known as chain stitches, but they really fall in the chain stitch category because we're still stitching through that loop of thread. So I hope you'll have fun with this one. These are one that are often known in the embroidery world, but I don't see them a lot in crazy quilting. They can add so much texture and there's so many different ways to use them. So I hope you'll enjoy following along with me today. I've got a 4-seam block in my frame. A couple of things about this one. First, I want you to notice that when I did this one, somehow it got skewed and it's way off to one side. That's fine. Remember, all this other stuff is going to get trimmed away. The other thing that happened with this one is it almost looks like you have one really long seam here. So we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. So it's technically a 4-seam block, but I'm going to divide it up. And we're going to do each half of this one as 1 seam. So even though it's a 4-seam block, we're actually going to use this one as a 5-seam block. I've got a couple of little threads there. We're going to just trim those off because those just get in my way and they distract me when I'm stitching. I had a little hard time figuring out which way I wanted to do the threads, so one of the ways to do that is I've just laid them out on my block to see where I like the balance of them better. And this is the one that I chose. We're going to start with one called a coral stitch. It's not a difficult stitch. We're going to do coral stitch along this one because I want you to be able to see it clearly. I'm going to work this one from right to left, and we're going to come up on the surface of this. I'm going to take my thread and I'm going to hold it up. We're going to make little knots along it. So I'm going to come over on the far side of it, and then I'm going to come up, and I want you to see where I'm coming up. I want to come up at just a little bit of an angle. And that will help make my knot a little more visible. And you can see as we pull, I get a little knot. Now I'm not going to pull those knots real tight. I'm going to do these pretty close together. So we're going down on the far side of my thread. Normally I would like to scoop stitch this one like so, but in the frame I have it too tight and I can't go through all the layers of my fabric. And I would really like to do that. So I am going to go ahead and go straight down. I will tell you, I think this is one that comes out better if you're scoop stitching it. And so we're going to come up just a little bit away, coming out on a diagonal, bring it through, and we get a little knot. And that knot is the chain portion of our stitch. So we're going down, and then we're coming up. Let me move that there so you can see I'm just coming up a little bit diagonal. Pull it and make my knot. I'm going to go down. And the bigger your thread, the more noticeable the knot will be. The finer your thread, the less noticeable it will be. So basically what we're doing is we're making a line of continuous little twisted chains. And that's why this one falls into the chain stitch category. Again, coming up a little bit diagonal underneath. So my thread's coming out in between. So I went down on the far side of it, and I'm coming up on the near side of it through my loop of thread. Going down on the far side, coming up diagonally through that loop of thread. And this is that really twisty vintage thread. I've used it a couple of times before and it is just so twisty. It doesn't always want to pull through. There we go. That's not a very nice knot. We're going to let it go. So I'm going to pull my needle down the thread. I think I'm a little close. That might be part of my problem. And if you're having trouble, just line it up so the thread comes straight through. Then I'm going to go down. And I'm coming up through the loop on the inside of that thread this time. And if you're pulling that taut, then your line in between the knots will be a little bit straighter. This one wants to be right on there. I'm looking at my blue line. I'm going to go just over that. I'm going to go ahead and make it even though it's in my seam allowance. And do it. And now to catch it, I'm just going to go down on the other side just like we would with any other chain stitch. And I kind of curved that one off to the side. We're going to go ahead and leave it. I'm going to turn it over and make my knot. Now we're done with that one. Now we're going to use this dark green thread, and I'm going to come over here on this one, and we're going to make another coral stitch, but this time we're going to do a zigzag coral that comes back and forth, and it's done the exact same way. So I'm going to start off out here in my seam allowance. I'm going to take my thread, and we're going to go up. We're not coming up from the bottom. We're doing this one mostly from the top, and we're going to go down just about 1/8 of an inch above. I actually want a fairly steep angle on this. And again, I'm stab stitching because my fabric is in the frame a little too tight. I'm going to come up slightly forward of where I was. If I hold this one out that has this leg, that will help it look neater. So I'm pulling up my needle through that loop of thread, and we're making a little twisted chain around that thread. Now we're going to come back down here. This is where it gets tricky because on that side we went on this side, but on this side, to make it look nice, you have to come to the outside of the thread. So we're going to swap directions. So we're going to come up there, and see we're going to have to make our twist, and then we're going to come forward and down just a little bit. Hold that out taut while you pull everything around till it looks like it's staying nice, and then your stitch will look like it's going in the same direction. So now let's go the opposite side. This time we're going to go to the right or top of our thread, go down, and we're automatically forming that little twist. We're going to go down and forward slightly. See that little twist going? Now this side we're going to come down, but this time you want to go this direction with your thread. Make the loop on the top, so we're going to go down on the outside or the bottom of the thread. We've made our loop, and we're going to come down toward the seam, toward the center, and forward just a little bit. And pull. Tighten that up if you need to. Hold it out there till we get right down there. And you can see that nice little twisted knot. Now we're going to go the opposite direction, go on top. You're going to the outside of the thread. Come up inside that loop, a little bit down and forward. And again, pull that taut if you need, till you get right down there. Now coming down, we're going to go to the outside of the thread. We're on the bottom side this time. But we have to make that loop. It doesn't come quite as easy for me on this side. If you're left-handed, you may find the bottom side a little easier. That's a little far. We're coming down just a little bit. I'm pulling that so I get that nice taut zigzag line. Now we're going up on the outside. That forms my loop. We're going to come up on the inside of that loop, forward and down just slightly. Pull that. And now let's come down, go on the outside of it, or the bottom side, but turn it so that it makes that loop. And now you're going to go inside toward the center, forward just a little bit, and now we're going to end this one off just like a regular chain stitch by going right over that at that side. And that is a zigzag chain stitch. It's tricky because you're switching directions, and if you don't switch directions, the stitch doesn't look right. And if you want to know how many times I had to pull this out and redo it, I actually stitched the whole thing wrong twice. So it happens to the best of us. I just had to rethink it. I kept thinking, that's not looking right. Why isn't it looking right? And that's because you have to reverse the direction of the knot to make it look right. So have fun with that one. You might find it helpful to mark that. I didn't mark it, I just winged it, and you can see I got this one maybe a little wide. It's an interesting stitch, and I hope to do more of that one in the future. I think we're going to do this one along here. On this particular stitch, I want to sit it on top so that we can really see it. I think I'm actually going to turn this around and we're going to work the other direction. I had a battery change, missed turning the camera on, so we're restitching this seam. On this one, I found it very helpful to mark this, and I decided that I wanted spacing that is 5/16 of an inch apart. So I marked that with my blue pen, and I did get off a little bit, so we're going to see if we can readjust that. We're going to be doing a stitch called scroll stitch. This is a stitch that I found very helpful to do with a little bit thicker thread. So we're going to use this sort of peachy pink thread. It's a size 5 pearl cotton. I was having trouble threading it through my regular embroidery needles, so I got out a chenille needle. It's got this bigger eye in it, and so it makes it much easier to thread, but it also means it'll pull out easier as well. So that can be a plus or a minus. On this stitch, we're going to start out here in my seam allowance like usual. And this time we're going to be making a loop. And your thread's going to get really twisty with this one. So to undo it, just twist it in the other direction. I probably twisted it too much there. And we're going to take these dots, and I want you to think about dividing it in quadrants. So if we're perpendicular to the seam here, we're going to make a loop. So bring your thread around, and we're going to be stitching in the center of that loop. So our thread is going to come out over the thread going in and out. If you think about marking this off with a vertical here, if we've got a straight line where the dots are and we have a vertical one or perpendicular one to the seam, we're going to go down in the upper right quadrant and we're going to come up in the lower left quadrant. So we're going diagonal and we're over the thread on both sides. And with this one, very similar to the coral zigzag that we did, you want to watch your tension on this top thread, and you can see how it's scrolling around as we pull. Now if I leave that too loose when I do this, you see how that knot flops over? So we want to pull that thread just a little tighter, but if you do it too tight, you really can't see anything that's going on. So I'm going to loosen that up ever so slightly. I want to see it wrapping. Well, and I've got it way too tight here. Hold on, folks. All right. So where I want that thread is about that tightness, and I'm going to pull. If I need to hold it, I'm going to put my needle down here and kind of pull against that needle so I can still see the scroll. That's what I want. And then I'm going to actually hold that with my finger briefly. And when I make my loop, I'm going to put my thumb and forefinger on either side on that loop. And I'm going to go down on the upper right, come up on the lower left, so either side of my dot. So you can see it wrap around. And that's a nice tension because we can see that scroll, we can see that turning. That's what we want. We're going to make a loop, go down over that thread on that upper right, come up on the bottom of your dot on the lower left, come out, and again pull, watch your tension. Just you kind of have to find your method of judiciously holding that tension. You don't want it too loose because it'll flop, but not so tight that you can't see the scroll. So make our loop, go down on the upper right, come up on the lower left, pull it through. I'm going to pull that tension just slightly, It feels like it's a little loose on the top, so I'm going to just help it along a little bit. That's good. Now I'm going to hold that, get it flat, make my loop, come down on the upper right, go up on the lower left, and I can see that's really loose there, so I'm just going to pull it down some, and then we're pulling the needle end of the thread here, not the loop end. And we're tightening that up. And again, you want it to hold that, but not flop that loop over. See, I'm twisting the wrong way, so I'm just untwisting my thread by twirling my needle in my thumb and forefinger. Then I'm going down in that upper right, coming up in the lower left, over both threads, making that nice little scroll there. That's good. Don't pull it too tight. I think I pulled that one just a smidgen tight. Let's loosen it up ever so slightly. Alright, that will do. Now I've got to make my loop. And again, down on the upper right, up on the lower left, around my dot. Bring that in a little bit. I want that nice scroll. And then this one to end it, I don't want to go down over here because that will flop back. So I'm actually going to come out over here toward that upper right side again to lock that one down so we can see that scroll all the way to the end. And that is our scroll stitch. And that's a really nice one in these thick threads, and I actually haven't tried it yet, but I'm thinking that might be nice in a narrow silk ribbon, like a 2mm or a 4mm ribbon. So we'll have to try that later on when we start talking about silk ribbon embroidery stitches. But that's not for months yet. I only have so many hours in the day, so we'll have to be patient and wait for that, but it will eventually be coming. I need to turn this block around again. Again, it's just easier for me to work closer to myself, and that's what helps me make that decision. I'm also always looking at which direction the stitch is done in, and that also helps make that decision. This time we're going to make a stitch called rope stitch. We're going to do this seam here in this variegated embroidery floss. Rope stitch is another type of stitch that you don't normally think of as a chain stitch, but it's actually a variation on twisted chain. And what we're going to do on this one, we're going to hide the seam almost completely. It also works really well for making things like stems and for curved design. So this is a terrific line stitch that you can use. I'm using 3 strands of embroidery floss. I have done this one with pearl cotton. To be truthful, I think I like it in pearl cotton better than I do in embroidery thread. Depending on how wide of a stitch you're doing, you're either going to have 2 lines, or you're going to work down a single line. And for the narrow one, we're going to work in a single line. So on this one, I am going to come up on one side of my seam here. And then I'm going to go down just ahead of that, but under my thread. And again, this is another one that I like better if you can scoop stitch it, but it can come out both ways just fine. I'm going to do it stab stitching to start with, just because I think it's easier for you to see. So we have our twist. I'm coming up really close. So what we're going to end up with is this top stitch that's going diagonally across is going to be what you see. Now that is our bottom, so we're going to come down and we're going to go here. So now I'm on the other side of my seam, but I'm back here next to this one. Can you see that? We're going to go down and see it forms that twist, and I'm going to come up right there. Now we want those top stitches to be parallel to one another. And I'm sort of exaggerating this here because I really want you to be able to see what we're doing. And as we get going, I'm going to go closer. So I'm going to go a little closer here. Make my twist. And I'm coming up just immediately below and locking that in. Again, watch your tension, because if your tension is off, it'll change the width of the stitch. So I really want to be coming as close to this stitch as I can. We have our twist, come up just below there. And then we're going to go down on the other side. So we're going back. See that twist? We're coming up inside the twist. I'm using variegated thread because I think it helps you see the pattern a little more clearly. I think this is actually one of our loose seams, so it's moving a little bit on me, and that's making it a little harder to keep it nice and straight. But see, we're coming right down. Got that twist. Now I'm coming up just inside. And you can see that little loop right there. Now we're going down right there. Try not to get too far out. You want to keep this all in a straight line. There's my twist. And if you can't see it, move it aside so you can see, and then move your thread back over, making sure you're coming up on the inside of the twist and not through the thread. The moment you come up through the thread, it will change the stitch. So this is one that I do think it helps to just take your time with. Don't try to hurry this one. Once you get used to it, it's actually pretty easy. I've used it for stems on other projects. In fact, I think I'll throw in a picture of the autumn bell pull here. I did a stem of rope stitch on that. That's the one that I can remember. I know I've done it before on other projects, but it's hard to go and find them because I don't save my photos by what stitch I'm doing, and it's one that's not a super obvious stitch. And I think I got the tension on the last one here just a little loose, and so we got a little bobble in the line here. I'm always catching that and making that twist. Coming up on the inside. Now we're going down just below that. So where that twist is, I'm outside of that completely when I'm going down. And then I'm making that twist, coming up in between, going down on the far side of that twist. And I'm going to come up and with embroidery floss, if you feel like your strands are getting uneven and it's starting to look a little sloppy, then pull your needle all the way up and just pull them back out, and that'll help straighten them out. I think part of my problem is here, again, this piece was not stitched down. That was one of those loose edges on a block, and so as I'm stitching, it's tending to push it to the side, and it's making everything else a little bit loose. So we'll see if we can correct that here as we go. As I said, this is not a fast stitch, this is a slow stitch. Take your time with it. That's what it will take to make it look really nice. And I think I got that one a little long. I do think I like this one with pearl cotton better. It's even nicer with a thicker pearl cotton. You get more of that rope effect. Don't undo the twist. Make sure you keep that twist in it. So I'm coming up inside the twist. Oh, do you see what I did? I twisted the wrong way. And all of a sudden I've got a stitch going the other direction. So we're going to undo that. We needed to come that way. There we go. Now we've got it going the right direction. So I just turned that twist over and came through it the correct direction. So keep that twist going the way you want it so you don't have that problem developing. Where I'm going down, there's kind of a little cross over here, and I'm going down right about where that cross over is. And when I'm coming up just on the edge of this other fabric, right below where it maintains that direction. So there's that little crossover, and when we do the next stitch you'll see that a little bit easier because I'll be using a thicker pearl cotton. If you start to see that go askew, that tells you you've gotten the twist wrong, so back it up, try it again, turn that twist around. I'm spreading the twist wide so it's a little easier to see where I need to come up. One of those stitches got pulled a little tighter. I think I might have just messed that up. Let's see. What are we doing here? There we go. I think my threads are starting to get a little uneven, so I'm just going to pull down again and pull up and straighten them out in my needle. I think that helps. And down. Open that twist so you can see where to come up. Go down. We're coming up just below. Again, trying to maintain that angle. Going down. And then we're going to go down. Maintain that twist. With the thread always coming over the top in the same direction. We're going down on the top side, come up through that twist on the bottom. Almost done with this one. I'm going to stitch it off into my seam allowance just like we've done before to follow that pattern through in case that seam moves to the side a little bit. This stitch also looks pretty spectacular if you're using a thicker rayon thread like a rayon pearl. It's got a really beautiful appearance there. I'm going to just do one more for good measure on this, and then we're going to lock that one off. We're coming through that little twisted loop, and that's what puts this in a chain stitch category. And I'm going to go down just over the end of that and lock it in place. And there we have our narrow rope stitch. I really like the effect of the variegated on that. Now I'm looking at this and I'm not real happy with that bunch of fabric, and I wish I had tacked that seam down before I did that. So before I stitch this one to another one, I may pull out my basting here and pull it down and do a light hand basting on that to help accommodate that and not have it bunched up there. If I was going to be putting lace or something on a block, that might be a good one to put lace on to help pull it in and hide that bulge. Now we're going to do rope stitch down here, but this time instead of doing a narrow one like this, we're going to do a wide one. And so let me show you that. And what you're going to find is that when you do a rope stitch like this, one edge is slightly raised. It's not a lot, just a little bit. So we're not going to go super wide, but you could do it really wide. I just don't want to spend that much time with it, so we're going to go 3/16 of an inch wide. I'm just going to make a line here. There we go. Now I can see that line. And we're going to do much the same thing. It's really not a whole lot different. What happens though is that the twist happens on the bottom edge of the thread. We're still going to start it down here. So we're coming up on that line. But we're going to kind of graduate this one, and we're going to go down just up here on that seam, and we're going to come up. I'm going to stab stitch this one because I'm right here next to the seam. I'm using another, oh my gosh, we might need to change needles here. So I'm putting my twist in. And where I'm coming up here at the seam and everything is thicker, I'm coming up right on the line, right between my twist. Now it's hard to see the twist in that. Now I'm going to come up here and go down. I'm going to change needles. That other needle was a lot easier to use. I think it was sharper than whatever this one is. I'm going to go back to this chenille needle because that stitched really easily. And with this thick thread, I want a good sharp needle that I can move in the thread easily. Alright, so I'm going to go down right up here to the other side. And we're just trying to square off the edge of this ribbon right now is all we're trying to do. You can see my twist forming. I'm coming up on my line right inside that twist. Again, I want that top thread to come parallel to the next one, and now I'm going to go down up here next to this, and so you can see it's automatically twisting the thread, and I'm going to come up on my line just below the width of a thread. See that? You want them to lie right next to one another. And now this one, we're going to start working down this seam for the rest of that on the top side. So there's my twist. I'm going to pull it so that I see it right next to that other stitch. I'm going to come up on the line just inside that thread and pull that, and that's going to help me maintain that nice width. We're coming down the width of the thread on the seam. And again, I'm holding that cross over. I'm coming up just inside that thread on the line. And so you can see this side's going to be higher. Now we're going to go down the width of a thread here. Maintain that twist. Come up on the line. Now I probably should have done this one first so that you can really see that twist taking place. Now we're going to go down on the seam. Hold that twist. Come up on the line. So it's just a twisted chain with long legs, and they're done so close together that it's almost like a satin stitch. So while it's technically called a rope stitch, you can make this wonderful wide ribbon. And you want them to lay nice, so lay next to each other, not on top of one another. And that's why it's important to kind of guide it and make sure you're coming up on that line, because if you start to weave in, then it's going to get narrower and it won't look nearly as nice. And I know that because I've had that problem. So letting it go parallel, come up on the line. And a lot of it's just getting your tension right. Play with your tension. And if you're practicing and you're having a hard time getting it right, instead of working on a really long seam, try working on just some short segments. You know, maybe do a 1/2 inch and try it, and then try it again, and then mark another 1/2 inch and try it again. And once you get it and understand this one, it's actually a pretty easy stitch. I find it easier with the pearl cotton because I can really see how things lay nicely than I do with the embroidery floss. But it just depends on the look that you're going for and what suits your project. And again, you can work it around a curve. I've seen beautiful ribbons embroidered using this stitch on projects. Ribbons and bows, you could make it wider and narrower as you go to mimic a ribbon turning. So lots of possibilities with this one. And when done well, it's really spectacular. Had a brief interruption, so I'm back at it. I've lost my train of thought completely here. I've pulled up some other little loose thread here, just pulling that out of the way because I don't want a fuzzy seam here. So you can see this little braided stitch that's happening underneath here. It's kind of lifting this edge slightly. I don't necessarily think that the wider stitch takes longer than the narrower one. In fact, I think the narrower stitch is actually the more difficult one. As I'm editing this video, I may actually decide to put this first and do the narrow one second. I think that you may find it easier to do the narrower one after you've seen the big one. So I'm just trying to make that X. Or that twist here. If I had to end this and start a new thread, I would bring it off right over here this way to the center, and then I would come up in the correct spot to continue it. We'll see how much thread I have here. I don't know if I've got enough or not. I don't know how to judge this one very well, so we just have to stitch it till we get there. Go down on the top. Again, always about the thread distance away so that we're keeping everything nice and parallel. Come up on the inside just of that thread on the blue line, or whatever you've made your line with. And I widen that twist if I need to. See, I was going to come up too far. Well, but I'm going to come up there. There we go. And I'm just trying to make sure that's laying nice and flat next to one another. Widen it with your fingers a little bit if you need to. And down on the top. I do think we've gotten a little bit shallower angle here as we've gone. I'm going to just see if I can tighten it up ever so slightly. But I want to do it without laying over the top of the last stitch. But you can see I started here and see how we've changed angle. And I think that happened right in here after my interruption. I could take it out and redo it, but I'm not going to. Now I'm getting down here to my seam line on the bottom side. I am going to just go ahead and continue to stitch right off because I need to finish that out on the top side. So I've still got all this to go. So I am going to be stitching a seam over a little thicker area of thread. I could change and satin stitch that, but I know my experience from doing things like that is that the moment I change the stitch, it changes the tension of the whole thing, and I'm never quite as happy with how it looks. Well, and I did that wrong. I am down to very little thread here. So I think we're going to sort of square this off a little bit here. I need to be coming up. And watch my tension. And I probably didn't do that the way I should have. I can guarantee that. Here, let's just fix that. I'm not happy with that. You know, sometimes you'll do something and you say, I can live with that, and sometimes you look at it and you go, nope, that's not working. So if it's not working, then just change it. Well, let's just go ahead and say, okay, I'm finishing off this thread and I'm going to start a new one. I'm just going to pull it off to the side here. I'm going to leave that dangle and I'll go back and make my knot shortly, and I'm just going to grab a new thread real quick and I'll show you how I finish that off. Remember, we had our twist and I want to come up here. I think that's going to be about right. I'm just going to kind of scoop stitch this off the end here Again, I'm coming up through my twist. I've gotten all turned around here, folks. I'm just trying to finish this off. Need to be over that, I think. There. Is that right? There we are. Now I got it. Maybe not. I don't know. I think we're close enough. We're just going to call it good here on this one. So ignore these last little bits here because I obviously was off in the wrong space here. I don't have my twist down correct to hold it. There we go. And now we've finished that seam off. I do have one kind of loose one here. And to fix that, I'm just going to come out here in my seam allowance. And I'm going to take a tack right around and through that thread to hold it in place where I want it to be. And now in that seam, you can't see that at all. So let me knot that off and then we'll take a look at the block. There is our block for today. We have coral stitch, zigzag coral, scroll stitch. We have our narrow rope and our wide rope stitch. And so I think this is probably a little longer video just because some of these stitches take a little bit more time to do. We talked about fixing that bulge. In fact, I probably will do that here before I put it away. I'm not necessarily so happy with this block. This was an awkward block. In the final patterns, if and when I ever can get them finished for you, I'm not going to include this block because I think it's just awkward. But I think we made a success of it in the long run. Let's take a look at the back on this one. Because the coral stitch and the scroll stitch, they're just little tiny stitches through the fabric. But you see the full of the rope stitch. So that's a little interesting. And let's go ahead and call this one, I believe, block number 13. So we're making progress. Well, I had a few challenges with this particular block. I am going to fix that little bobble in the fabric, and I think I'll be happier with the block on a whole. I tore things out and restarted a few times. Some of it was my fault, some of it was distractions. I hope you've enjoyed this. I'd love to know which one of these you like the best and which ones you're going to try. Let me know if you've ever done that wide rope stitch or the zigzag coral stitch before. I really like the impact of both of them and can see so many possibilities as we talked about. And I'm also really liking the scroll stitch, but I have had my challenges with it. My tendency was to stitch it too loose and then it doesn't hold in place and it kind of flops around. I think I finally figured that one out and I'm real pleased with that. Thanks so much for being here with me today. I deeply appreciate you watching these videos and for all the likes and subscribes. It's just been astonishing to watch the channel grow here over the last few weeks. Have a beautiful day, happy stitching, and I will see you in the next video.